So.
Thank you, Representative Yarmouth, and thank you for leading us in this discussion. It's rather interesting to hear you, with your introductory comments, speak of the approach to one side of the ledger. But what has been advertised out there, what has been messaged, is that what we have are these cuts that translate into savings. So we're going to save at the expense of the middle class, but we're going to cut programs for seniors, for veterans, for children, for working families, for small businesses, and you know, that will produce savings. This propensity for tens of billions of dollars worth of cuts, $100 billion worth of cuts, an insatiable thirst for cutting domestic programs that really provide for the dignity factor for many families, provide for job creation and retention. We saw what happened when we invested in job creation, and we've gained over 2 million private sector jobs in just over the last year. So we know that those investments oftentimes will lead to lucrative dividends. They will relate to programs that are required for our working families, our middle-class Americans across this great country, and also it provides for an opportunity for job creation that produces the sort of mix, that down payment, the priming of the pump, if you will, that makes it all happen. So, Representative Yarmouth, you're correct in talking about this as a one-sided approach, but what troubles me is that there's this messaging effort underway that would try and convince the American public that it's producing savings. But where do those savings go? There's trillions of dollars of cuts to the middle class in this Republican plan, and those trillions of dollars of cuts that they deem savings are then that fuel that provides the resources to cut, you know, the trillions of dollars worth of millionaire, billionaire tax cuts, to provide for the continuation of services that contractors will provide that have been deemed wasteful or at times fraudulent with the Pentagon. They'll continue to protect those investments. They will allow for additional relief for corporations. So it's sliding dollars out of the pockets of the middle class and investing them, the spending that they do, as they accrue those savings. The new spending that they do is tax cut delivery for those on the upper echelon. And to me, it sounds very much like the pre-recession situation under the President Bush administration, which led us to this deep and very painful and long-term recession. You know, their plan has been dubbed by themselves, by their own members, as the path to prosperity. I would suggest it's a road to ruin for the middle class, and it's a road to riches that paves the streets with golden opportunities for those who are the most comfortable in society, those deemed on top of the perch. This is a very interesting scenario that's being placed before this body and all of Congress, for that matter, and we need to put it under the microscope, and we need to message to America what is happening. You take from the poor and the middle class, you slide it over to the most comfortable, to corporations, millionaires, billionaires, oil company handouts, mindless handouts. That's how they pay for those, by sliding that cash down that slippery slope and investing it in tax cuts, spending on tax cuts for those, as you indicated, just didn't get quite enough under the Bush tax cuts. And in a while, too, I want to go toward the Medicare situation. They want to end Medicare with this budget. I want to talk about that after we hear from some of our other colleagues, but this is an interesting scenario. Road to ruin, road to riches. It's a complete separation, a dichotomy of special needs out there coming at the expense of middle-class America. It's a raid on our middle class. It's paving the road to riches for the very fortunate, and it's creating the road to ruin for America's middle class. Without a strong middle class, without enhancing the purchasing power of our middle class, we have a weakened America. That's easy enough to prove through history. So thank you again, Representative Yarmouth, for bringing us together on a very important discussion here in the House of Representatives as we continue to fight for the middle class that has been impacted severely and would take even more hits if this budget were allowed to pass through.
I thank the gentleman, and he mentioned the road to ruin, and it's also a road we've been down before.
Absolutely.
It is a road we've been down before. Back under the Reagan administration, this whole magical economic theory of trickle-down economics was developed. And the idea was you let people at the top make as much as they possibly can, do as well as they possibly can, and that will trickle down and help everybody else. And the man who was largely responsible for that policy under the Reagan administration, David Stockman, who was his budget director, he said just last year, "I find it unconscionable that the Republican leadership, faced with a $1.5 trillion deficit, could possibly believe that good public policy is to maintain tax cuts for the top 2%. That was last year when we were actually debating whether to return to the Clinton-era tax rates. The Clinton era, by the way, which resulted in one of the most impressive decades of job growth in this country. Now they even want to double down on that. They not only want to, not just don't want to go back to the Clinton era tax cuts, they want to cut it even further. And their theory is that by cutting the tax rate by 10% more on the wealthiest people in this country, that they'll create more jobs. Where do they get this stuff? Well, the only source they have for that theory is the Heritage Foundation. Now, the Heritage Foundation was also the group that said that if we cut taxes in the Bush administration, then we're going to have this enormous job growth and this enormous surplus. Didn't quite work out so well. But they're saying now, this is what I call the Harry Potter budget. You may wave your magic wand and you make anything sound like it's true. Cut taxes further on the rich, slash spending to help the low and moderate income people in this country, and the economy will bloom. Well, I'm not buying it. I don't think most Americans will buy it. But again, it's a road we've been down before.